My name is Sophie Green, and everything changed on a quiet Saturday afternoon in the middle of fall. The day had started off like any other, bright, crisp, and full of the familiar smells of home. I had brought my boyfriend, Ryan, to my parents' house for a casual family gathering. It was one of those rare moments when we could all be together without any distractions, just a simple weekend of catching up. The leaves outside were a patchwork of red and orange, and inside, the scent of pumpkin pie filled the air as my mom hummed softly in the kitchen. Dad was in his usual spot, sitting in his favorite chair, reading the paper, while my younger brother, Jake, was sprawled out on the couch, scrolling through his phone. Nothing unusual. Nothing to suggest that this would be the moment that would turn my whole world upside down. We had settled into the comfortable routine of family life when my mom, with her usual cheer, announced that she had found the old family albums. "Come look at these," she said, her voice beaming as if it were a new discovery. But I knew exactly what was coming. Mom had always done this, pulling out the same albums every year, acting as if she had stumbled upon them by chance. I'd seen them all before. They were filled with pictures of family trips, birthdays, and holidays, and I always felt this strange mixture of nostalgia and detachment when flipping through them. I didn't think much of it at first, but as I flipped through the pages with Ryan, I noticed something that made me pause. Ryan froze, his face pale. His eyes were fixed on one particular photo, and when he grabbed my hand under the table and whispered, "Do you see it?" I didn't know what to think. What could possibly be wrong with an old family photo? But as I looked closer, the unease started to creep in. Something was wrong, but I couldn't put my finger on it. Yet, deep down, I knew my life was about to change. I leaned in, my eyes scanning the photo that had caught Ryan's attention. It was a picture of me as a child, standing on the beach in a pink swimsuit, my hair tied up in a messy ponytail. At first, it seemed harmless enough, a typical vacation shot. But then something felt off. I couldn't quite explain it, but it was as if the smile on my face wasn't my own. It looked too perfect, too rehearsed. As I continued to examine the photo, I realized that the background was completely wrong. It didn't match the one I remembered from that beach trip. My stomach tightened. Ryan's hand was still resting gently on mine under the table, but it felt like there was a distance between us now, like he was standing on the edge of a precipice that I hadn't yet seen. I blinked, looking at the next photo. It was the same. My face was unchanged. My smile the same vacant expression. But the setting was different this time, a park with a swing set in the background. The more I flipped through the pages, the more I started to feel like I was in a dream. Same face, same angle, same shadow, yet always in a different place. I tried to swallow, but my throat was dry. This couldn't be right. How could I have never noticed this before? Why didn't I remember any of these moments? Ryan squeezed my hand tighter, his voice barely a whisper. "It's like they're reusing your face in all these photos. Same expressions, same pose, but everything else is different. Doesn't that seem weird?" His words hung in the air, and for the first time, I couldn't deny the truth that was forming in my mind. It was impossible to ignore. I wasn't sure what I was seeing, but one thing was certain. My life, my memories, weren't what I had thought they were. The world suddenly felt unfamiliar, like everything I knew was a lie. The room seemed to close in on me as I stared at the photos, my mind racing with questions I couldn't answer. I tried to keep calm, to act like nothing had shifted beneath my feet, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something fundamental had broken inside me. How could I have missed this for so long? My whole childhood, every moment, every memory, felt like it was slipping through my fingers, and I couldn't hold on to it anymore. The laughter in the background, the chatter about my old school days, it all felt hollow now, like a performance I had been watching from the outside. My parents, Jake, even Ryan, they were all so engrossed in the memories they had built around these images, but none of it felt real anymore. Ryan must have sensed my panic because his hand was on mine again, steady and warm. But it didn't make the dizzying whirl of confusion in my head stop. I could still hear my mom's voice, recounting stories from my childhood, like the time I tried to feed a pine cone to a stray cat, or the endless hours we spent at the family cabin. But none of it clicked anymore. It was as if my memories were being erased, replaced with a version of my life that I didn't remember. I leaned back, trying to make sense of what I was seeing, but all I could focus on was the overwhelming feeling of being trapped in a story that wasn't mine. My family smiled, they laughed, they talked, but I wasn't sure I belonged in the story anymore. "I need to see more," I whispered, my voice almost foreign to my own ears. Ryan gave me a small nod, flipping through the pages slowly, letting me absorb the reality of what was unfolding. But no matter how many times I looked at those photos, the truth remained. I didn't know who I was anymore. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, the photos Ryan had shown me still haunting my thoughts. Every time I closed my eyes, the same images replayed. My face, the same exact expression, copied and pasted into different settings. It was like I was trapped in someone else's version of my life, unable to escape. I could hear Ryan's steady breathing beside me, but it did little to quiet the storm inside my mind. My childhood, my identity, felt like it was all a lie, a fabrication, and it was like I was the only one who hadn't known. I reached for my phone, my fingers trembling as I scrolled aimlessly. The silence in the room was deafening. I could feel the weight of everything pressing down on me, suffocating me. I needed answers. I needed someone to tell me what the hell was going on, but I didn't even know where to start. My parents? How could they have kept this from me? How could they have allowed me to live this whole life without ever telling me the truth? And why didn't I see it sooner? How had I been so blind? I couldn't keep pretending anymore. I needed to know what happened to me to understand where I really came from. I dialed 911, my heart pounding in my chest. "I need help," I said when the operator picked up, my voice hoarse. I think I was kidnapped when I was a child." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. I could feel the weight of my words hanging in the air, heavy and uncertain. The operator's calm voice brought me back to reality. "Are you in danger now?" she asked. "No," I whispered, my voice barely audible. "But I think I've just realized the truth. My family isn't who they say they are." The morning after I called 911, I woke up feeling like a stranger in my own life. The night had offered no comfort, no answers, just more questions that twisted in my mind like a labyrinth I couldn't escape. Ryan had stayed up with me, keeping quiet for the most part, letting me work through the mess in my head. But when the morning light crept through the blinds, I knew I couldn't keep ignoring what I had just uncovered. The truth had to come out. I couldn't keep living in this lie, trapped in this distorted version of reality. I sat in the living room, my hands clenched around a cup of coffee I couldn't taste, trying to steady my nerves before confronting my parents. I had no idea what I was going to say. "So I found out I'm not your daughter." Seemed a little too blunt. But that was the truth, and as much as I hated it, it was what I had to face. My heart pounded as I heard their voices coming from the kitchen, my mom's light-hearted chatter as she hummed to herself, my dad's gruff responses. It all felt so normal, so false. How could they keep this secret from me for so long? I stood up, walking toward the kitchen with shaky legs, but before I could even say a word, my mom looked up, a smile spreading across her face. "Good morning, Sophie," she said as if nothing had changed. But something had. I could feel it in my bones. I didn't wait for her to finish. "Mom," I said, my voice tight with emotion. "What aren't you telling me?" Her smile faltered, and my dad, who had been reading the paper at the table, looked up. There was a silence that stretched between us, thick and uncomfortable. My mom's face crumpled, and with a sigh, she finally said, "You weren't ours to begin with. We took you. You were just a little girl when we found you." The world tilted, and for a moment I couldn't breathe. I stood there in shock, the words echoing in my head like a drumbeat I couldn't escape. "You took me?" I whispered, barely able to process what she had just said. My mom's face was filled with a strange mixture of guilt and something else, something I couldn't quite name. She shifted uncomfortably, and my dad, still seated at the table, didn't speak. He just looked down at his hands, avoiding my gaze. I could feel the air growing heavier, suffocating me. My whole life, every memory, had just been torn apart in a matter of seconds. I had always known something was off, some distant feeling that I never fully belonged. But to hear the truth spoken out loud was a shock I wasn't prepared for. My parents, the people who I had trusted, had stolen me. I wasn't their daughter. I was someone else's child, taken away, hidden behind lies. Why was all I could manage, my voice barely above a whisper. Why didn't you tell me? Mom looked down at the floor, avoiding my eyes. It wasn't like that, she said quietly. We couldn't have children. We tried for years. When we found you, you needed us, and we thought we were giving you a better life. We thought you would be better off with us. Her words felt like a betrayal, each one sinking deeper into my chest. They hadn't raised me because they loved me. They hadn't wanted me. They had taken me to fill the empty space in their lives. I wasn't a daughter to them. I was an object they had claimed. I didn't know what to say. I just felt empty, hollow. The truth of what they had done to me, what they had taken from me, settled deep into my bones, and it was as if my entire existence had been a story someone else wrote. I need to leave, I said suddenly, my voice cracking. I turned away before they could respond, rushing out of the room, desperate for air, for anything that would make sense of this nightmare. I walked out of the house without even saying goodbye, the cool air hitting my face like a shock. The world outside felt so much sharper, so much more real than the bubble I'd just stepped out of. I didn't know where I was going. I just needed to leave, to put some distance between me and the lies that had shaped my entire life. Ryan followed me, his footsteps heavy behind me, but he didn't try to say anything. He just stayed close, a silent presence that felt grounding, like a lifeline I didn't deserve. We ended up in the car, me behind the wheel, my hands shaking as I gripped the steering wheel too tight. I couldn't think straight. My thoughts were a blur, racing, trying to make sense of the pieces that had just been thrown at me. My parents had taken me. I wasn't even theirs. I had no idea where I came from, no idea who I truly was. The emptiness in my chest was suffocating. All the years, all the moments that I had thought were mine, were nothing more than a lie. Ryan finally spoke, breaking the silence that had stretched between us. Sophie, we'll figure this out. You don't have to do this alone. His voice was steady, but I could hear the worry beneath it. I wanted to believe him, wanted to trust that things could somehow be fixed, that the truth would make everything better. But the reality was too harsh, too brutal to ignore. Who am I, Ryan? I asked, my voice trembling despite my effort to keep it steady. If I'm not theirs, who am I? Ryan's silence said it all. He didn't have the answer, and neither did I. For the first time, I felt like a stranger in my own life, floating untethered. There was no safety net now, no version of the past I could hold on to. All I had were the questions I wasn't sure I was ready to answer. The days that followed felt like a blur. I couldn't escape the feeling that everything in my life had been turned inside out. I spent most of the next few days in a haze, just going through the motions, trying to keep myself together. I didn't know where to start. What do you even do when you realize the people who raised you aren't really your parents? How do you piece together an identity when it feels like the foundation beneath you has crumbled? Ryan tried to be there for me, but I could see the strain in his eyes. He was worried, and I couldn't blame him. He didn't have the answers either. I didn't know what I needed. I didn't even know what I was looking for. All I knew was that I couldn't stay in that house. I couldn't look at the same walls, the same furniture that had somehow been tainted by the lies. I decided to look for answers. It was all I could think to do. I sat down at the desk in my apartment, opened my laptop, and began searching. The name my parents had given me didn't feel like mine anymore. Maya Saric, the woman who was supposed to be my mother. I found a few dead ends, nothing concrete. But I kept going, my heart pounding in my chest with every click of the mouse. Each moment of uncertainty felt like it was pulling me further into a world that didn't make sense. It wasn't until late one night, after hours of searching, that I found it. A Facebook profile. The woman in the photo looked so familiar, but not in the way I'd expected. It wasn't until I stared at her face for a long time, my breath catching in my throat, that I realized she looked like me. She was me. Or at least she could have been. The same dark eyes, the same expression I wore when I wasn't smiling. I sent a message, my fingers trembling as I typed, "I think I might be your daughter." And then I waited. The hours felt like days as I stared at the screen, waiting for a reply. Every time my phone buzzed, my heart leaped into my throat, only to sink when it was just another meaningless notification. Ryan tried to keep me distracted, but I was lost in the uncertainty, caught between hope and fear. What if she didn't remember me? What if it was all a mistake? Every worst case scenario played out in my mind like a loop, and I couldn't escape it. Just as I was about to give up and go to bed, my phone buzzed. I almost didn't want to look, afraid of what I might read, but something pushed me to check. The message was short, but to the point. "Can we talk?" The words were simple, but they hit me like a punch to the gut. I sat there for a moment, my breath shallow. I read the message over and over, as if trying to make sure I wasn't imagining it. I quickly typed back, my fingers fumbling over the keys. We arranged a video call for the following evening. The thought of actually speaking to her, the woman who had been my mother before I was taken, both terrified and excited me. For 25 years, I had no idea she even existed, and now she was just a message away. What if this wasn't how it was supposed to happen? What if it was all too late? The next day, I barely ate or slept, too consumed by the anticipation of that call. Ryan sat beside me, trying to comfort me with little words, but I could tell he didn't know what to say either. The call was set up, and when the video started, I saw her face. Older, tired, but still there. Her dark eyes staring back at me with something unspoken. For a long moment, neither of us said anything. It was like staring at a reflection I didn't recognize. Then she spoke, her voice trembling slightly. "I've been looking for you for 25 years, she said. And just like that, everything changed. I could barely process her words. For a long time, I just sat there, staring at her face on the screen, trying to connect the dots between the woman in front of me and the memories that were slowly coming back. Maya Saric. The name didn't feel like it belonged to me, but somehow it did. This woman, the one I'd only just found, had once been my mother. She wasn't just a stranger on the other side of the screen. She was the missing piece of a puzzle I didn't even know existed. Her eyes, the way they held so much sadness yet so much hope, made me want to reach out through the screen and tell her that I believed her, that I understood. But the words stuck in my throat. I had so many questions, so much pain, and yet the only thing I could focus on was her voice, soft and filled with emotion as she continued to speak. "I never gave you up," she said quietly, her eyes brimming with unshed tears. "I never wanted to. I was forced to leave you behind. I trusted someone, a neighbor, just for a couple of hours while I went to the office. But when I came back, you were gone." Her words hit me like a freight train, but it wasn't the shock anymore. It was the undeniable truth. My real mother had never abandoned me. She had been searching for me for years. I wasn't lost to her. I had been stolen. The realization settled in my chest like a weight that I could never fully explain. "I thought you were dead," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I didn't know what happened to you, but I kept looking." I felt a tear slip down my cheek as I whispered, "I'm here now." And in that moment, despite everything, I finally felt a connection to something real. Life can throw unexpected challenges our way, and sometimes the most difficult truths are the ones we least expect. The story of discovering my true identity has taught me the importance of facing the uncomfortable and confronting the truth, no matter how painful it may seem. Often, we live our lives based on what we've been told or what we think we know, but it's essential to question and explore the deeper layers of our reality. Don't be afraid to seek answers, even when it feels like everything around you is uncertain. It's in those moments of uncertainty that growth happens. Always trust yourself and your instincts. If something feels off or doesn't sit right with you, don't ignore it. The path to healing and self-acceptance often begins with acknowledging discomfort and taking the steps necessary to understand your truth. And most importantly, never underestimate the power of love and connection. Even when things feel broken beyond repair, relationships, whether with family, friends, or those we've yet to meet, have the ability to bring light into the darkest moments. Embrace change, accept the truth, and know that you have the strength to build a new beginning, no matter where you started.